Hello, friend, and welcome to Borgcast Original Series 1.22 with Anne-Marie and Peter.
Hello.
And we've got some previously on Return of the Archons.
Mm-hmm.
Martin says, I agree with Llama. The festival sounded like The Purge. Star Trek invented The Purge. What's The Purge?
It's a series of films where on one night of the year or something, all laws are suspended and people go mad.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I can't think of any times Doctor Who did the mad computer trope pre-1966. Zoe blew up the International Electromatics computer with logic in The Invasion. There was Boss in The Green Death and Zoannon in The Face of Evil, but all of those came later.
Mm.
It did also remind me of an episode of The Prisoner called The General, but that was in 1967. Certainly in the 1960s and 70s, the Doctor was also very anti-computer, so it must have been the general attitude of the time. Yeah, quite possibly.
I think so, yeah, when computers first came in. They were seen as more of a threat rather than just part of life now. Yeah. Olf says it's a fascinating thing, isn't it, that distrust, here we go, of computers that starts in the 60s and runs through to the mid-80s. There's lots of examples of it in Who and Trek, and I imagine it crops up in other shows of the time. I presume it went away when the home computer boom kicked in the early 80s, and the whole idea that computers were somehow threatening seemed ridiculous when presented with ZX81. But I have no idea when or why it started. Yeah. Well, I guess it's just people's imaginations getting away with them. But there we go.
Yep.
Tonight we cover A Taste of Armageddon.
Armageddon out of here.
Hey.
Captain's log, stardate 3192.5, planet Eminiar 7. My orders are clear. We must establish diplomatic relations at all cost.
You were warned not to come here.
500,000 people have just been killed.
Our duty now...
Your duty doesn't include stepping into a disintegrator and disappearing.
I'm afraid mine does, Captain.
Sir, there's a multi-legged creature crawling on your shoulder.
You and your party have been declared war casualties. You will be taken immediately to one of our casualty stations so that your deaths may be recorded. If possible, we shall spare your ship, Captain, but its passengers and crew are already dead.
Written by Season 1 producer Gene L. Kuhn and Robert Hamner, who has 66 writing credits, the usual suspects, but this is his only one for Trek, and apparently it came out of casualty reports from Vietnam.
Okay.
It's directed by Joseph Pevney, who's our favourite director at the moment because he keeps cropping up in Star Trek and Buck Rogers. And this is a third of 14 and second in a row after Return of the Archons.
So, you get the captain's log. They're in the sector NGC 321, opening diplomatic relations with Eminiar or something like that.
Eminiar 7. Yes.
Yeah. And they get a signal, and it's a code 710. No approach under any circumstances. And then RC Ambassador of Cuntness.
Ambassador Fox. It's played by Gene Lyons, who was a regular on Ironside.
Okay.
And apparently the second transport ship that gets destroyed in Generations is named after him.
Right.
But he's your typical twitting authority, and he's got a crazy collar on him as well.
Oh, yeah, he's wearing a stupid brown suit.
It reminds me a bit of some of those naff 70s chasubles you get, with the really thick collars.
Okay. It's a bit niche.
It is a bit niche, sorry, yes.
Yes.
Feel free to Google chasuble. It's a bit of church tat.
Yes. And the ambassador says it doesn't matter that there's no approach under any circumstances. We've, lost ships out here, so we've got to go anyway. And Kirk's like, what, even if it involves starting an interplanetary war? And he's like, yes. And I'm like, what if the reason they're saying no approach under any circumstances is because they've all got the plague?
Yeah, yeah.
Fucking hell,
Hopefully
what
that's a different code, I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. Ridiculous.
And that's how the Skull and Crossbones got started. Because that was originally the sign of a plague ship.
Okay.
So it would stop the pirates being boarded by anybody, basically, because people would assume that they had the plague.
Right. Okay. So, that's your teaser. And then after that, they're in orbit, and apparently the USS Valiant was lost. It was a diplomatic mission and they never came back.
Valiant crops up in, I think, Deep Space Nine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
presumably a later ship.
Yeah, I
but
think, isn't it the other Defiant ship
Yeah.
that's crewed by the cadets?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Red Squad.
Mm.
Anyway, so Kirk's like, fine, we're going to beam down. And he's like, well, I'm coming. And Kirk's like, no. I don't know what you're going to face if you go down. So they order the cunt to stay behind. And Scotty's in command again. Yay! So you get Kirk and Spock and 3 red shirts, one of which is a yeoman. So I guess technically not a red shirt, though she's in red.
Yeah, I mean, none of them die, interestingly, in this one. So,
although they do change out of the red shirts.
yes, maybe that's why they survived. And they beam down in front of a fantastic-looking mat. It's brilliant. Except Sprog 2 just went, oh, another painting. It's like, Philistine, get out!
So they beam down right in front of a particular area, and they're met by people with bad hats and a woman wearing a tablecloth.
The fashions on this planet are quite something, aren't they?
Yeah.
This is, William Ware Thrice, after he could afford all the hallucinogenic drugs at this point, I think.
Yeah.
And their disruptors are quite cool as well. Those will go on to be adapted and used by the Klingons and Romulans later on.
Yeah, but not with all the weird shit sticking out of them that looks like you've got a little pot of them spare leads for pencils.
What?
When you look at the disruptors, okay, it really struck me while we were watching it. They've got all these little bits sticking out. And do you remember those pencils, mechanical pencils they were called, that you put the lead in and clicked it up?
Yeah.
You used to get these little pots with the leads in, and if some of them broke and they were all different sizes, that's what it looks like. A little multi-different sizes leads from a mechanical pencil. That's what it looks like.
Oh, right, okay.
You look at a picture and you'll see what I mean. I noticed
Well, I'm
it.
not sure I can be able to Google what you've just said. But anyway, never mind.
I'll do it later. Anyway, that's what it reminded me of. It turns out that this particular planet has been at war for 500 years. They get 1 to 3 million dead annually, and the guy in charge, who's, what is it, something or other, 7, Anon 7.
Anon 7, okay, so we're first of all introduced to Mia 3, played by Barbara Babcock, who's the voice of Trelane's mother in Squire of Gothos. And she'll be back providing some more voices and another on-screen part in Season 3. And another actor from Roddenberry is the Lieutenant. She was also in Cheers and Frasier. Whee! And that's quite the tablecloth she's draping around herself.
Yeah, yeah.
The dudes are all wearing silly hats.
Oh, very silly
different
hats.
coloured legging trousers. That's such an odd choice, but there we go. And then Anan 7 is played by David Opatashu, who was the Llama Juna in Time of the Hawk. Yeah, the one that said, oh, don't worry, death isn't a thing. By the way, you're dying.
Yeah, yeah. Anan 7 says that, the war is real. They get 1 to 3 million dead annually, and his wife was died in the last attack. They're at war with Venticar. And then they have a hit in the city tonight. Except that there are no vibrations or sound, no evidence of any attack, and the yeoman gets her tricorder out, and there's no anything. And Anan says it's fusion bombs, but it isn't. It turns out that it's all done mathematically, and people knowingly and willingly walk into disintegration booths in order to die.
They don't have to string along a long while on this, don't they? They're basically trolling the Enterprise away team, because they could have come out with this straight away, and they really should have done. But instead they keep making them just go, well, hang on a minute, we can't hear anything. Scanners can't pick up anything, and it goes on and on and on until eventually they're like, oh, hang on, is this all computers? And they go, well, of course it is. It's like, oh, you gits. Yeoman Tamura, by the way, is played by Miko Mayama, who's another actor from The Flying Nun.
Oh!
Hey! Second best show after BJ and the Bear.
So, apparently the moment they appeared in orbit, the Enterprise and its crew and the landing party all featured in the calculations, and now the Enterprise has been mathematically destroyed, so they want to beam the crew down to go into the... Oh, it's just utterly fucking ridiculous. Emir 3 is one of the ones who's got to go in the booth, and the away team are now confined to quarters, where Kirk asks for Anan 7 repeatedly. And then on the Enterprise, you've got... I keep tripping over these. Bones and Scotty. I keep saying Spotty and Skock.
Skock.
And Spotty's a character in Super Ted. It says, they can't raise them, and it's like, what is it you want me to do? I'm not going to fire in them. And then a message comes through, And Scotty's like, and even McCoy's got a raised eyebrow, so Scotty checks with the computer and it's fake.
It's a fake!
Meanwhile, down on the planet, Spock again uses the phrase Vulcanians instead of Vulcans.
Yes, I believe this is the last time he'll use that phrase.
And apparently he can use telepathy through the door to make the guard open.
Yeah, that's a very convenient thing that I'm not sure he'll ever do again because it's a bit too convenient.
Yeah.
So, okay, so there's nothing to contradict that he's able to do that up till now, but I'm pretty sure he doesn't do that again in the future.
So they escape and they see a woman go into a disintegration booth followed by a man. Then they see the Amir Free appearing and she's really not wearing very much. And they manage to overpower some people and get their phasers, use them to blow up one of the booths. And then, because of all this happening, Anan 7 is like, right, that's it, I'm going to fire on the Enterprise.
Yeah. There's a good moment where Spock overpowers one of the guards by saying, there appears to be a multi-legged creature on your shoulder, and then gives him the neck pinch, which is quite cool. But yeah, Scotty gets to do the post-advert log, which is quite nice, to get people up to speed. We have DePaul at the helm this week, returning from Arena, and this is his last appearance. Scotty had the good sense to have the shields up already, and he threatens to return fire, but Fox breezes in and forbids it. He says it's all a misunderstanding. Wow. Kirk and party return to their room on the basis the Eminarans will leave checking that till last, which is logical, I guess. He makes it clear to Mia that he's going to stop the killing, and it's the second episode when the Prime Directive's effectively forgotten, I guess. Fox hails Anan 7, who claims they attacked by accident. He leant on a button and invites the ambassador down. Scotty refuses to lower the shields, thankfully.
Yeah.
Now, apparently James Doohan was involved in a real-life version of this when he was in the Canadian Artillery, where he was ordered to take an action on a training exercise that would have led to troops under his command dying. He was vindicated by an inquiry and promoted to captain.
Nice.
McCoy understandably rips Fox a new one, but apparently Scott's name is going down in the ambassador's report. In a very don't tell them your name, Pike moment. The haggis is in the fire now, the engineer says, as surely no Scotsman ever has. Yeah. I guess we'll hear that from Purry. But I do like the Scotty Bones pairing, that's quite fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Kirk sneaks in to see Anan 7 and offers him a glass of Trovia, accusing him of being a barbarian. True to that, Kirk points out he could destroy MNR 7. Captain is pounced on though when he leaves Anan's quarters and overpowered by two guards. Make a note of that when we come to later on. Somehow, despite the shield still being up, Fox beams down with an aide and is arrested. I mean, it serves him right, but how did he be able... How was he able to beam down? Makes no sense. Having rejigged their communicator, Spock gets through to the Enterprise. He orders Yeoman Tamura to stop Mia killing herself by sitting on her if necessary. Fanar. Seriously, though, it's great that she's getting quite a prominent role. Whilst the actor arguably isn't the best, it would have been good to have had her back. So
yeah.
Spock goes on to rescue Fox. Aboo! The ambassador almost apologises. And then we have... Fox on the run, history and everybody comes around. Well, that's a tune, I suppose. And Ann 7 points out the carnage Kirk's refusal to cooperate will lead to. But the captain points out that the horrendousness of war ought to be put one off conducting it in the first place.
Yeah.
Stupidly, the leader hails the Enterprise, giving Kirk the chance to give General Order 27, which may as well be General Order 66, because it's...
Wipe them out. All of them.
Yeah. I thought it was General Order 24.
Was it? I don't know. I mean, you know me and numbers. Anyway, either way, it doesn't sound very Federation, does it?
No.
Kirk points out he didn't start the fighting, but he will finish it. Captain goes on to overpower everyone in the room.
Yeah.
Like there's about 5 guards.
And one of them trips over his foot that he sticks out when he walks past the chair, and suddenly he knocks another 4 over.
Yeah, it's not very realistic.
No.
Spock turns up. I assumed you needed help. I see that I was in error, he says, which is a nice line. True to form, Kirk destroys the computers running the war. He really doesn't like computers, does he? He gives a great speech telling Anand to contact his opposite number, and Fox volunteers to stay behind and oversee peace talks. Then there's the regulation cheesy ending with Spock saying Kirk almost makes him believe in luck, and the captain replying that his first officer also almost makes him believe in miracles.
I believe in miracles. Where from? You sexy thing, you.
Yeah. But I think it's a bit cheesy in places, but I think it's a great concept, this idea of a painless war leading it to being unending, effectively.
Yeah.
There's some wonderful, if rather eccentric design work going on here. And it's one of the episodes I think of when you mention the original series, because it's just got that high concept business about it that always sticks in my head.
Yes. I mean, I got really engaged with this episode because I was doing a lot of shouting at the telly, wasn't
Yes. Well, Ambassador Fox is another one of those admirals.
Yeah, but badassider.
A badass? Yeah, does badass? Badass? He's not a badass.
No.
So it doesn't quite work. But anyway, yeah.
Ambassador, I don't know. Moron.
Yes. He falls in that category of authority figure you love to hate. So,
yeah, like Kai Wynn.
But he does come round at the end, so that's good as well.
I don't know.
He does.
Well, I mean, when they say negotiations are going well, I mean, probably they both hate him so much they're united in the fact they want to kill him. But no, he's a cunt. And I got very engaged and very shouting at him. And also Anand Seven, the whole sort of, But
he's smug, isn't he?
Well, it's not just that. He says, he kept saying millions will die. It's like, they're already dying. And then it's like, but our cities will be controlled. Oh no, never mind the fucking people. Don't you dare touch our city. What the fuck?
Yeah, it's very Tory, isn't it?
Yes.
Oh, it's the economy. We've got to protect the economy.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Apologies, by the way, if you can hear sort of thumping bass lines in the background, but the schools broke up today, and I get the impression that half of Catford is partying as a result.
Yeah.
Hey ho.
But no, it's a good episode. There's bits in it that are rather shonky, like the fight where Kirk can suddenly take on 5 people for no adequately explained reason.
And how does Ambassador Fox beam down? That makes no sense.
And who designed his wardrobe? But overall, I think it's well written and it's engaging, and it made me anyway want the right thing to happen and all the rest of it. But I thought overall it was really good. It's just not perfect. There are flaws there, but overall it's really good.
Yeah. Well, what did other people think?
And we've heard from Jeff, who writes, I really like this one. It's one of those societies taking an idea to absurd extent stories that Trek does so well.
Yep. And Boss has this to say: this episode had similarities with last week's in that the crew encountered a race who'd been doing something stupid for many years.
Yeah.
And Kirk put a stop to it by blowing up a computer. I like the concept of them fighting without ever fighting, but as Kirk pointed out at the end, their logic was deeply flawed.
Yep. It's like that line from Spock, isn't it, that's really good. When he says, from a scientific point of view, it almost makes sense. And then the guy says, well, so you approve? And he said, I did not say I approve. Yeah. I said I understand.
I thought I guessed Kirk's plan, but was wrong, as I thought by blowing up the Armenians' computer, the enemy one would have assumed victory, thus ending the war. Kirk's actual plan was much riskier, but probably more realistic. It was nice to have an episode set on an alien world that looked different to Earth. The costumes of the guards reminded me of the Thunderbirds. Yes, that's true. And it looks like another pair of curtains was sacrificed to make a dress for a female character. I thought more like a tablecloth. I like that the new yeoman was Japanese. That must have been very rare in the 1960s. She also emerged unscathed, so had a lot better time in it than previous yeomans. Yeah. Clever move by the red-shirted security officers to change outfits halfway through, which probably kept them alive. Yep. I like Scotty in this episode. Yeah. He took command well and stood up to the ambassador when needed. It's probably Scotty's best episode so far.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Overall, I enjoyed this one. A classic Star Trek story with nothing too silly or annoying. Yeah. Basically, when they give Jimmy Doohan something to do, he does it really well. Yeah. It's just a shame they don't use him as often as they should, really. But there we go.
Who else we heard from?
We've heard from the Llama God.
I'm Scott Fixia, Shat Figat. Don't want to close my eyes. I don't want to fall asleep because I miss you, baby. And I don't want to miss a thing. Well, a fear of coining yet another phrase. This, I'm fairly sure, is one of those other classics, isn't it? It's a fantastic science fiction story thought exercise thing which takes an interesting idea and runs with it and gives you something meaty to think about, which is what all good science fiction and Star Trek stories should do and often do. The whole idea of a virtual war being waged where no actual damage is done to property, because remember, property is important, kids, and the only real casualties are people, because people can be replaced. People aren't as important, kids. Why is this starting to sound quite familiar? That's certainly an interesting idea for someone who wants to deal with cold, logical numbers battlefields and things, and sure, it potentially reduces the risk of random casualties, although apparently not from the number of people that seem to be hit, and the fact that in this episode Mia is killed while stood next to a whole room of other people who don't die. I don't know, it's a bit weird, but it certainly makes war cold and dispassionate, and yeah, it definitely asks the question, if you could do a war like this, should you? Well, I mean, no, you shouldn't. I think that's kind of what this episode says, but it does pose an interesting thought experiment anyway, and it's certainly a very relevant point to consider, given how fast and loose politicians be playing with people's lives these days, and how it's much more important to take care of financial interest than it is of people. You'd suspect, really, that if nations on this earth could, in fact, conduct war by virtual means and force people to walk into suicide booths, then yeah, they would. And what's more, people would do it as well, because given the anti-mask protests we've seen in recent years, I think people would happily walk into a machine that would kill them, because to do otherwise would show that they were weak or something like that, and they weren't a sheep. I don't know. People are fucking weird. But yeah, I think it's something to go down here. What is interesting is Kirk's solution to the problem, to make them see sense that this is actually wrong, is to threaten them with more war. Either war with Vendica or war from the Federation. This isn't the first time that Kirk has used the full force of the Federation as a threat or an instrument to be used, but yeah, it shows a very militaristic background here and a very aggressive way of thinking, which I guess wouldn't be out of place in the 1960s. And also, it is a very Cold War idea, this, isn't it? That basically the threat of war is enough to actually prevent war. And that's certainly an idea that we've been going around with the arms race in the 1960s, so I can see why this episode was made, and I can see why writers at the time would have made Kirk come up with that solution. Of course, having said that, you do have to wonder what other solution he could have used, because, as, again, we've seen very, very recently, appealing to decency is not something that really works on politicians. Obviously, that's tying a lot of them with the same brush, and I know several decent politicians, but in the main, the ones that end up running things, yeah, actually appealing to decency, that's not going to work. You have to use some other big lever, and given that Kirk had no financial leverage on that planet, no shares or anything, I'm assuming, then, yeah, threat of force was certainly the only option he really had. Not necessarily a moral argument to be made there, but again, it's something to think about, isn't it? Maybe. I don't know. That said, as much as this was an interesting tale and something to think about, it was also very dry. I didn't see much in the way of camaraderie between Kirk and Spock this episode. It very much seemed to be more interested in the ideas rather than interplay between the characters. On the planet itself, we don't get to know much about Mia, apart from the fact that you get the romantic music and the soft lenses every time she walks on screen, because, yes, women are just objects. But on the flip side, the actor who plays An 7 is pretty good, but after the last couple of episodes, which have featured a lot of location shooting, this one, being set entirely on sound stages, felt very claustrophobic, and weirdly at odds with my recollection of this, which I think mostly come from reading the James Blish adaptation, which obviously only took place in my head, but for some reason I thought this was going to be a more expansive set, so yeah, that was a bit weird, but that's entirely me. The best thing about the episode, though, is Scotty in charge of the Enterprise and taking no shit from anyone. He sees through the deceptions, he won't give in to the stupid ambassador, which is something which has already been an issue in an early episode of Star Trek, and which will continue to be an issue all the way through future series, in the form of the outsider on the bridge who thinks they know better, but, you know, at the end of the day, he's just getting away and causing trouble. So yeah, we need to see Scotty in charge of the Enterprise more often, I think, because he totally rules at this. Although, of course, I do have to question some of his dialogue. My haggis is in the fire now. Yeah, that's yeah, I like to consider myself an honorary Scotsman now. I've lived here for some time, and I don't think I've ever heard anyone actually use that. To be honest, Scotty's more likely to have said, aye, but he can get to fuck. That's more like the kind of thing I'd expect we heard. And finally, started it last week, computer side count. Does this count? Kirk does blow up a computer that's organising wars, but at the same time, it's not the computer that's actually in charge. It is the humans who are using the computer to enact the wars. So is the computer in charge? Are they in charge? Does this count? Does this count? I will leave it to you and the listeners to decide whether we count this as the second act of computer side or whether the count stays at just one. So I'll find out when I listen to your podcast, I guess. And indeed, as ever, I look forward to listening to the podcast. I look forward to finding out what everyone else made of this. I hope that everyone's been able to survive the fire in which we burn. And until next time, glory to you and your cast.
Thank you. In terms of computer side, it got killed. It wasn't made to commit suicide.
Yes, it got blown up by phaser fire this time. And not only that, but it wasn't in... Whilst it kind of was in charge, it wasn't in charge. I mean, because, yeah, the council was in charge.
Yeah.
But they delegated the computer to decide who died, basically. So, yeah. I presume at any point they could have just turned the computer off, whereas you got the impression with Landru the other time that wasn't the case, because he would have got his guards, his monk cops to go and beat people up.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It is a Cold War idea that the threat of war is enough to prevent actual war, and that's what got them talking. The
difference is, of course, that here there's actual casualties in huge amounts. Yeah. You'd think people would be up in arms still, but they're not.
No.
Yeah.
Planet of Tories or something.
Yeah.
But you're right, appealing to decency doesn't work on politicians. That's why Kirk has to threaten them. And yeah, I think there would be people who would do it, who, you know, to show they're not weak. The downside is that if we actually implemented that, even though that would be horrific, it would rid the planet of an awful lot of gammons. And those of us left would therefore be much better off.
I think Mir was declared killed by a later attack rather than the same one, but I could be wrong. That was the assumption I'd made.
Okay.
Because, otherwise everybody in the room would have died, presumably, unless she was just incredibly lucky and got hit by falling masonry as far as the computer was concerned.
Yeah, I don't
Who knows?
know. Yeah.
And yes, that the phrase is definitely not Scottish.
We didn't.
Hasn't got enough F words in it, definitely.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. What did Drew and Tracy make of this?
So what do we think of Taste of Armageddon then?
It's great, yeah. It's excellent. It's very good.
That was quite intense, actually, wasn't it?
It's a clever sci-fi concept.
Yeah. So let's go through some points.
Okay.
So they've been at war for 500 years.
Yes.
And instantly the fucking song comes to mind, and it what? What is it good?
It's a very it's good.
Absolutely nothing. Say it
100%.
again. You know, it's like, why are you dragging this fucking war on for 500 years, you fucking idiot?
Yep.
They're playing war games, quite frankly,
They are,
with the computers, aren't they? So it is like war games. So your computer plots this course, and bang, there you go. There's like a pretend hit, but all those people in that area's got to die now.
Well, I know the reason is because of story narrative to make it like more exciting, but why don't they immediately say to them, like when they've been down, there's a war on, we're using computers, if you get killed in it, you're going to go into disintegration thing, so get lost now.
Because they don't want to do that. They want people to like die as a result of their stupid fucking war, don't they? So we did have to pick up Spock on his Vulcanian.
Yeah,
what
I know.
Was
Vulcanian, don't know.
Oh, the Vulcanians, no Spock. There is no such word. Ambassador shit.
Yeah, Ambassador Fox. You can tell he's a baddie from the beginning, can't you? Just he's got a baddie face
he just
about
looked
him,
like
hasn't
you
he?
wanted to punch him, but like Scotty standing up to him with McCoy.
You know what?
On backup. Go on,
Scotty
Scott.
is the boss in this.
He
There's
absolutely
3 times when he is the boss. Like, first one is when they pretend to be Captain Kirk and he just instantly sees
He knows
threat.
it, doesn't he?
The second time is that bit when he says, "No, I'm not doing what you say. I don't care."
Can fuck right off.
And the third one is when Captain says, "General Order 24," and he just goes, "Yep, that's what I'm doing." He's like, "I don't,
Yeah, but
he's
General
the
Order
boss.
24 in 2 hours, that's like massive code, isn't it?
Why have they got General Order 24? Why do Federation starships need an order to completely destroy a civilised planet?
And why in 2 hours? What's he going to do in 2 hours?
Well,
do
no,
it now.
that's the timeline he gives him, but
do it now!
General Order 24 destroy the whole planet. Hope no one ever does that for Earth. That wouldn't be good, would it?
So we had to pick up on Scotty's. We did laugh when he was like, "There's a haggis in the fire."
Yes,
it
was
for sure.
good.
I can't do a Scottish accent for some reason. It coming out Irish, but that really did make us laugh. Didn't it?
It was
That
great.
Funny.
I love Anon 7. What a sci-fi classic name that is, isn't it?
Anon 7.
Anon 7 is a great
Anonymous
name.
7. Is that what it's code for?
Maybe. Not only though is Scotty the boss in this, Captain Kirk is the boss as well.
Yeah, but he's always the boss.
Because obviously I've seen this loads of times. It's well noticeable when he's talking to Anon 7 and Anon 7 says about, if we don't do this, it's gonna be like death, destruction and disease, and you can see in Shatner's eyes that's when he realises the plan to destroy the computers.
Not Shatner.
Well, Kirk's. You can see it in his eyes. That's when he goes. The light bulb goes on. It's a good acting by Shatner.
Yeah,
it's good acting. I give him that. That is when he formulates the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, destroy the
computers,
and they're gonna have to actually do the war. It's good. It's good.
I really enjoyed this. I thought it was quite.
Oh, I think this is
tense.
excellent.
Yeah,
I
this was
know
a
I
good
banned it around
episode.
a lot, but this is a classic of a classic.
Oh, you always bloody say it's a classic.
This may be the
Of course
most
it's classic. It's TOS.
It's excellent. It's just high sci-fi concept. It's great characterisation, Scotty and Captain Kirk. This is excellent. This is what TOS is about for me.
Absolutely. We didn't talk about going into the disintegrator. Is that what it's called? The disintegrator?
Disintegration
chamber.
yeah.
But that's less talked about. Yeah, anyway, I liked it.
Brilliant. Yes.
Okay, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, why would you actually have General Order blow up an entire fucking planet?
It's definitely not very Federation, is it?
No.
So, Klingons, yeah, I guarantee they have something like that, but not the Federation.
No, no.
Shatner's, I think, definitely relishing his role this week.
Yeah.
Yes, getting his teeth into it and enjoying himself. It's always good to see. And, a top-tier classic, I think is fair to say.
Yeah. And, yes, absolutely, Scotty is the boss. When he will not take any shit from that ambassador. That's just awesome.
And finally, we've heard from Puri.
Hello, Args. Puri here to talk about A Taste of Armageddon. What does Armageddon taste like? Probably marzipan. Anyway, this wasn't bad. Watching it kind of with my critical eyes on, there's things that I think would do different, but you can obviously see the theming they're going for, the concept that war has become remote and not in kind of a angry, grumpy old person's thing of, war was a lot better when you had to stab someone in the heart with a knife or club them over the head with a bit of flint. More the idea of as wars became more distant, i.e. if you think in the 60s, long-range bombing was a thing, the ICBM was coming about, and the gist of it is, particularly in America, you could be at war with a country and actually see very few results. Again, in America, they didn't get bombed. Obviously, people still went off and died, but aside from Pearl Harbor, there really weren't many bombing raids in American soil, and so this idea of potentially you could start getting quite gung-ho about war if all you're doing is commanding bombers to go off, and they take that to the next level with the idea of, and in fact, why ruin all these nice buildings, when we could just, do it in a, even more civilized way of having two computers simulate it. Now, again, I think where I'd have maybe developed the plot a bit, there is to an extent a bit of sinisterness when you think about it. I don't think they play it well enough. That the people who are kind of just literally, they've been told you're dead and they're now queuing up to be disintegrated. Like, there should have been a bit more of that, because the thing which got me was both times you see the disintegration booth get blown up, and was blown up with people waiting to be killed. They're all running away from the burning flames and explosions. You were queuing up to be killed, guys. Oh no, I don't want to be killed on my way to disintegration. That would be awful. I mean, suppose you could argue, being blown up is more painful, but Kirk standing there holding a gun on them saying "go," it's like, what are you going to do? Shoot me? Standing outside in a disintegration booth. What do you think is happening next? But the basic plot is that yes, they go to this plant. They're warned off, and again, we also have. I'm curious. Now, here's a thought. The TOS didn't really see many admirals or badmirals per se. Is the TOS equivalent of a badmiral the pushy Federation official? Because you had that lad in the Galeo 7 with a stupid cape, and you've got this bloke with his Wilfred from the Bash Street Kids collar, being the most gullible idiot on Earth. And indeed, I quite like the fact that the Enterprise crew don't fall for any of the tricks. When the guy uses the voice changer, Scotty's first thing is, I smell a rat. And goes and runs it through the special magic computer, which tells him, it's false. I know you guys asked, but the haggis is in the fire is not a Scottish phrase. I don't even know if it makes sense. You boil haggis, so why would it be in the fire? No, that's something. But what I quite liked about that bit, and it did actually make me laugh, is Scotty goes, no, I'm not taking the shields down, and we're not beaming anyone down to that damn planet, you stupid official. And the guy goes, well, I will put you in my report. Now, in fact, the way McCoy speaks to him afterwards is, well, now you've done it, is a bit serious. And I honestly thought that sounded more like taking the video. Oh, dear God, he's putting you in a report. Oh, man, Scotty, you're in trouble now. But it wasn't delivered that way. And you have that. Again, I actually quite like the concept of it. And Kirk blows up the computers and basically says, well, now you've got to fight the war properly, or you can just go, because the idea being that they've not, I think that's what's underdeveloped. I think they should have pushed a bit more on have you not tried to end this war? And basically, the war is being run with computers. No one has any particular desire to kill it. They just accept that you get a simulated attack and people go to suicide booths. Similarly, I'd have actually put a bit more sinisterness into it with the idea of, oh no, we don't destroy the buildings, we'd lose all this brilliant infrastructure. No, when stuff's blowing up. No, it's just the people, because they're more replaceable. You could actually, I think, they don't play up the sinisterness enough, and that is my problem. I think you could have actually really made this quite you could have some quite inhuman sort of, thinking here that the crew are butting up against. But yeah, overall, actually quite a decent episode. So yeah, quite enjoyed it. So all that remains to say is do keep up the good work. I always look forward to the podcast, and I will feedback in the next one. But until then, bye.
Oh, he was cut off in his prime. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. Oh, good. Well, we have it from the source now that haggis in the fire is not a phrase.
It doesn't work because you boil it. Yeah. And you're right. I do think that they don't play up how sinister it is to prioritise buildings over lives. They could have played that up more. And yeah, you're right. These people are running away from flames or a phaser when they've been queuing up to die.
Yes! They're going to kill us whilst we're waiting to die! Bastards!
Yeah, and I think Armageddon does taste like marzipan, actually.
There we go. And yes, it's generally Commodores that are a problem in the original series rather than Admirals, which come in the next generation. But yes, here we have an ambassador throwing his weight around. Hey how. Right. Well, next time, recording on Wednesday the 3rd of August, just before we go on holiday, we shall be talking about Space Seed. Ooh, been looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
There she is. There she is.
Yes. Which then will follow on nicely to our coverage of Strange New Worlds, which starts on Wednesday the 24th of August.
Yeah.
And we'll be doing that fortnightly. And as and when we finish Strange New Worlds, we have the joys of Lower Decks Season 3 to cover, because that will finish by then. So, yeah, we're kind of feeling slightly deluged by Trek at the moment, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
And there are only so many hours in a week, so, watch this space as to see how we can cover it, but that's the plan at the moment anyway. People were generally sort of responding. I put a thing on the Facebook group saying, how do you want us to deal with Lower Decks? And generally the thought was better to wait until we finish Strange New Worlds and then cover Lower Decks in a bit more depth rather than just do a quick recording every week. So that's the plan.
Also part of the plan for fans of the original series is that when we've finished, finally, Buck Rogers Season 2, we're not going to be starting a new thing. So the weeks that we had been doing Buck, we will then pick up the original series of Star Trek.
Yes.
But that's a little way off yet, because unfortunately we've got a few more episodes of that gobshite to watch.
I think we're talking January, from what I remember, but there we go. Yes, and we will then, on the other feed, do the occasional special, I think. But yes, ultimately, we'll transfer, because we want to crack on with the original series, because I'm really enjoying it, but there's just so much other Trek to talk about.
So rather than start a new cast,
Yeah.
let's make sure that we're not going without the original series for too long, and that will then take over what was Buck Rogers' time slot.
Right, folks, stay cool, take care, cheery bye.
Bye.
The opening music for this podcast was provided by the talented Drew Barker.
The artwork was created by Andy Palastides.
All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only, and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com, where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or borgcastammo. #Borgcast.
Shut it down!